Bias testing being required on college campuses to take business courses? That's what I'm here to explore. Emily Sturge is a campus reform correspondent, student at the University of Florida, and a contributing guest on this program. Emily, good to have you back.
Good morning, Steve. It's great to see you.
I'm glad you're here. All right, so what is this implicit bias that's required testing? Where is this going on and why?
Okay, let's call it like it is. The University of Tennessee's implicit bias testing. It's a clear attempt to indoctrinate students with leftist ideology. Students take the test tells them they're racist and an awful human being, and the students are led to believe that their only path to redemption is to become a leftist. These tests are divisive, they're manipulative, they're morally wrong, and of course, they have no place in our education system.
And yet they do it anyway. University of Tennessee, implicit. So the test basically, if you're white, you're a racist. I mean, how dumb is that, honestly?
I mean, you're spot on. I've taken this test myself. If you're someone like me, if you're somebody who's not a member of a minority, this test is designed to shame us, saying that we're inherently racist just because we have white skin. Professors are getting away with this. They're teaching this in the classroom. They aren't teaching students to use their critical thinking skills to form their own beliefs, to form their own political opinions. Instead, they're using tests like this to force ideology on students and indoctrinate them into the leftist belief system.
So why are they doing it? Because look, you took the test. Does it ask you what your race is?
Of course it does. That's exactly what it's based on. The Leadership Institute's campus reform has reported extensively on DEI and its infiltration of higher education, and that's where these tests are rooted. Students like me, well, not like myself because I don't feed into this, but students at universities are rewarded for subscribing to this DEI mindset. For example, the California State University system literally gives scholarships. They spent $30,000 for students to promote anti racism and, quote, Black excellence. They're not only just pushing this DEI narrative, they're literally funding it, they're subsidizing it, and they're using taxpayer dollars to do so.
How are they getting away with it? How is nobody challenging this, in a state court or a federal court or even challenging the administration at this university? Of course, this happens not just at the University of Tennessee. It's not just the volunteers. It's others as well. But how do students like you not push back and say, look, this is garbage. This is in violation of the Civil Rights Acts of the 1960s and worse? Why do they continue to push this down without anybody fighting back?
You know, what's interesting is where we're seeing pushbacks on this DEI narrative. This DEI narrative has infiltrated higher education, but it's also infiltrated the corporate world. And the corporate world has seen that DEI teachings are not productive. They don't boost sales. They create tensions and divisions among employees. And we're seeing major businesses and Wall Street firms walk back on these DEI practices. For example, Microsoft, Ford Motors, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, the list goes on of these businesses that have walked back on DEI efforts after they've proved to be detrimental. You would think that this shift in the corporate world would serve as a wake-up call to academic institutions to reconsider the real life, the real world implications of forcing this leftist ideology, because clearly it's not productive.
Yeah, it's not productive. It's just kind of sad, Emily. I always appreciate you bringing this to our attention. And sadly, there's more of it and not less. But there is pushback. There is hope in some places. I mean, at least it's not going completely unchallenged. We're doing it here and elsewhere. So there are people standing up and saying, hey, this is wrong. But it takes courage. If you're on a college campus, you might be outnumbered 5 to 1, 10 to 1, 20 to 1. I mean, if you stand up and say, look, this is nonsense, you might just, it'd be the people that are being labeled as racist that are standing there yelling back at you. The simple-minded white folks who are, anyhow, I'll give you the last word.
Well, it does take courage to stand up to this, and it's so sad. Implicit bias training like this and DEI initiatives, they create divisions among students on campus or among employees in the workforce. And of course, they lead to a toxic environment. By labeling some people as racist or biased or wrong, they're creating an us versus them mentality. We're alienating students. And as a result, of course, classrooms are no longer open places of dialogue or discussion. There's no such thing as diverse opinions anymore. Instead, classrooms and universities as a whole serve as echo chambers where the leftist worldview reigns supreme. The leftist worldview is regarded as the correct and moral view. And that's what students are learning in classrooms today.
And well, actually, it's exactly the opposite. Emily Sturge, campus reform correspondent, student at the University of Florida. Emily, always nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.